by nothing other than a free-running operation of God's natural laws. I call the process God's automatic creature-generating machine. A good teacher will invent flashy names for things, so there it is. How many people here would be willing to, now I don't want to have a loud conversation with 2,000 people, but how many people here would be willing to try to learn from a person who has some expertise on the subject how God's creature-generating machine works? Can I see a show of hands? Who'd be willing to learn something about that? Okay. Who would not be willing to learn something about that? Anybody?
Oh yeah, right here.
Oh, okay. Someone is closed-minded and admits it. I encourage you, I applaud your candidness. Now, some of you may still be reticent to let me in, even for a trial run on evolution. You may be wondering if you will lose your faith if you even so much as entertain evolution. So maybe this will help a little. Can someone be both a Christian and an evolutionist at the same time? Of course they can. Two of the most famous evolutionists of all time were Christians. Here is George Lemaitre, a Belgian Catholic physicist priest who galvanized cosmologists in 1927 by proposing that the universe began when a hot, dense, primeval atom exploded, an idea which adumbrated the modern Big Bang theory. He is considered to be the father of the Big Bang theory. He was later decorated by the Pope for his scientific achievements. And here we have Theodosius Dobzhansky, one of the three greatest evolutionary theorists of the 20th century. He's famous for saying, "Nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution." And as I pointed out, he was a Russian Orthodox Christian. Okay, now, what I'm going to do with my remaining time is attempt to explain how two of the most important developments in vertebrate evolution have occurred. I'm going to talk about the evolution of legs and the evolution of wings. And I'm lastly going to talk about what may be the most difficult to explain problem in all of organismal evolutionary biology, which is the evolution of birds in general. Okay, so here we go now. What do we mean when we say that living things have evolved? We mean that all living things are genetically related through a process of what Darwin called descent with modification from common ancestors. And here is what I call, when I teach it, the central mechanism of evolution. All right, here's how evolution works. This is God's automatic creature-making machine. Evolution always occurs in three steps. First, we have mutation to DNA, which can occur in a multitude of very well understood ways. Secondly, we have altered embryological development. It alters the way the organism develops as an embryo, right here, represented by these arrows. And the third step is always what Charles Darwin discovered, natural selection, where an environmental scenario must exist which naturally selects for, or at least does not select against, the new phenotype. Here's just a few slides showing the guy who figured out the third step. That's the one that we got first, going back. Historically, natural selection was figured out first. Voyage of the Beagle in 1831, Darwin sailed around the world, and then upon his return got married, had many children, and proceeded in 1859 to publish one of the most famous works in the entire history of science on the origin of species. Okay, the second part of the central mechanism that was discovered was mutation to DNA, discovery of the double helix, principles of genetics in the first part of the century by people like Thomas Hunt Morgan and so forth. That was what was worked out next, and it's only extremely recently, it's really only since 1984, that we have even begun to understand the third middle step. This is the one that we've never been able to explain until now. And this is why creationists' objections to the theory are entirely reasonable, up to this point in time, I would say. So would you like to see so here's a picture of an embryo developing. And the third step, altered development, now being unraveled by many, many scientists around the world. A couple things that you need to understand. One of my goals here is to help explain the theory itself. It's my contention that most creationists reject the theory because they don't really understand the theory. I would reject it too if I understood it the way creationists do. I really would, and I don't mean that as an insult. I used to be a creationist. I literally applaud you as creationists for not accepting the theory as you understand it. You've done a rational, reasonable thing. You've displayed your intelligence by doing that, as has Dr. Hovind, who's an extremely intelligent man, and he's probably going to steamroll over me in the rest of this debate. But would you like to see the machine itself in operation? Okay. Well, sorry, you can't. Because the evolution machine operates continuously and seamlessly all around the planet, in every nook and cranny of the Earth's multitudinous environments, and it is also constantly operating genetically on the molecular and biochemical level inside the living cells of all the world's organisms. The machine is way too complicated to see in the true sense of the word. But you know what? I have created a special graphic which provides a simplified, highly schematic picture of the machine in operation. And I call it an evolutionary phase space diagram. Now let me catch up here. What this is going to explain, what this explains is the evolution of legs. We're trying to explain how you go from a lobe-finned fish here to an early amphibian. Lobe-finned fish here, going down, see his little legs there. I really wish it was darker in here. Can we just turn the lights down a little bit? Okay, and we have a pretty good explanation, we think, of how this happened. We think that legs evolved underwater first, not on land. This is a creature called Acanthostega, long fish-like tail, totally fish-like body, but he had little tiny legs and toes, 8 toes. Here's the actual fossil of Acanthostega. Here's what the skeleton looks like articulated. And we're pretty sure he lived underwater because he had a long fish-like tail that would have done him almost no good on land, crawling around down low to the ground. So now here's my picture of the evolution machine, God's creature-making machine, and how it works. Okay, so here's what's going on in this machine. Now I know this is really small for most of you, but we'll do the best. I'm doing the best I can. What we have, this is a multivariable graph. That is not a valley, okay? It looks like a valley. It's not a valley. This is a three-dimensional graph in what I call phase space, evolutionary phase space, showing the